There's one project in particular that I've been cracking down on, and I really mean that. My hands have been really cracking. Overall, I adored the just quickness of this. And those are just, the woes of being a knitter who likes to give their family fun things. There's a chance this does not get done in time. I don't know. I just really like them. Woohoo! It's been a good couple of weeks.
I'm Nora, and this is also known as Nora Knits.
Hello there, I'm Nora, and you're watching, also known as Nora Knits. Thank you so much for joining me for another podcast episode today. We are going to be talking about a couple of WIPs, a little thrift acquisition, another one. Woohoo! It's been a good couple of weeks for thrifting yarn, and I'll also tell you a little bit about what I'm wearing today. So why don't we start there? This is the Minto sweater by Magdalena Parker of Knitonomy. This was actually the first test knit that I had done. It was the first cable knit sweater that I had made. And it was also the second garment I had ever knit. It was the second thing I had ever knit. Yeah, bold. But this is now nearly 2 years old, and I knit this up out of some very affordable yarn. I actually had purchased it on clearance way back when I knit this, and so the yarn was Yarn Bee, Must Be Merino. I think that the colorway was called Tobacco. I don't even know if it's something that they make anymore or what, but it was on mega discount. And so this whole oversized sweater was very, very affordable to knit. It is a drop shoulder. It features a folded over collar and then all of these really beautiful, dainty sort of cables that are like staggered in a bricklay fashion, such that the twist kind of falls in between, every other cable. So I really love this sweater. It's super duper oversized. I believe that I knit this in the size C and the lightweight version. It has been a while, so I'll definitely just make sure to link the Ravelry page for this one below. I will say I haven't worn this one since probably last fall, and putting it back on now, with the experience that I have now, of course, again, this was the second sweater I had ever knit. I had knit 2 hats. I knit a basic raglan sweater. I actually knit a pair of shorts. That's right. And then I knit this. So this was very fresh for me. And putting it on now with my new experience that I have, I will say that the little things that didn't really bother me when it was fresh off the needles are starting to, and it's all me errors. The first one being, and you could probably tell that this neckline, it is a folded down collar. And so I, at some point, kind of got the whole thing a little cockeyed, and instead of going straight, it kind of leans off to the side. And I also had sewn it just the littlest bit too tight. So I feel like it kind of is riding up on me a little bit, and then I'm just bothered by the ribbon kind of pointing in one direction or another. And then the other thing that I still go back and forth about whether or not it's a pro or a con for this sweater is the length that I had knit these sleeves to. So obviously, when I put my hands out like this, they're very short, very bracelet length sleeves. And overall, I don't mind that in a sleeve because I really love that I can wear this and still get things done and not feel like they're in my way. And they're very easy to kind of roll up to get them out of the way, just the nature of the way that she designed the cuff on these. But I do feel like for a sweater that is as oversized as this one is and has become with wear, I do feel like the sleeves look a little bit disproportionate to the rest of the sweater. So somewhere in my brain, there is a world in which I tackle this one day and make a couple of little tweaks where I undo this collar and sew it down, not leaning to one side and with a little bit of a looser, and then also go back and add a little bit of length to the sleeves. But I say that and then I think, is it worth it? And the thing is, I love this sweater. I love the color of it. I love the ease of it. This is an acrylic blend yarn, so it's super easy, just like care, and it was so affordable, so it's just very easy to throw on. But something else that I've learned with my knitting experience now is the way that I feel about different weights of sweaters. And I don't mean worsted versus fingering weight. I literally mean how much this weighs, and I guess more than that, the sort of drape of it. Obviously, this is a very fluid fabric, and that just comes from that acrylic nylon wool blend that it is. But you can kind of tell that it's just hanging on my body, and I feel like it could look a lot better if it was knit out of 100% wool, which is something that I could have only learned by continuing to knit garments. So my thought then being, is there a world in which I kind of have a redemption for my Minto sweater, because it's still one of my favorite things I've made. Like, it's one of those things that I look at it and I do feel ultimately so proud of it. And so there, somewhere in the back of my mind, it's percolating that I should just knit a second one, because I also kind of love the celebration of this being one of those first things that I knit. And I can look at the neckline and not love it, but also appreciate the fact that that was someone who had never knit, had never sewn down a neckline before. And the sleeves being a little too short, that was someone who didn't even consider changing the length of those sleeves. And the fiber choice being a little bit off, that was someone just really trying to work on a budget, because I also thought when I picked that yarn out that there's a possibility I wouldn't even be able to make it through this sweater. There's a part of me that said, you might not actually be able to accomplish this, so don't go and splurge on some yarn that you don't even know you'll be able to finish the project with. So now that I have the experience, the confidence that I do in my knitting, I do feel like it would be worth it to just knit a second one that I can love, and even just to have that kind of side-by-side comparison. I would maybe even knit it in a very similar color. I like this sort of mustardy yellow color. I'm really into this. So anyway, that's me rambling, just saying that this is my Minto sweater. This is what I'm wearing today. It does bring me a lot of joy to pull it out and reminisce on where I was and where I am now in my knitting. And I have to tell you that I really do recommend the pattern, even if you are a beginner, haven't done cables before. Obviously, I was an extreme beginner. I think I started this project in February. No, I think I started this in March of 2023, when I had learned to knit on January 1st of 2023. So very beginner friendly. I thought that the cables were really engaging and fun, and I can recommend this even to a beginner. Take it from me. I knit this as a beginner myself. So that's what I'm wearing. With that out of the way, I would love to tell you more about the current project. And so why don't we go ahead and dive on in? If you were here last week, then you probably can anticipate the fact that I have been fairly monogamous in my knitting over the past week. So there's one project in particular that I've been cracking down on, and I really mean that. My hands have been really cracking down on this project, and it's my own fault for setting the deadlines that I do. So that is definitely where the majority of my attention will be going today. I will tell you that I did not touch my 2024 holiday dress as I anticipated, that wasn't going to happen, but I did get a little bit of work done on my yoga winter sweater by Naringa Rook. So let's start with that, because we'll be able to go through that pretty quickly today. Here we have it. This is my kind of basic knitting in the round type project. This definitely got some work while we were watching soccer over the weekend, and as it stands right now, I believe, actually I can tell you exactly, I am 8 rows away from where I'm supposed to split for the raglan with this one. So not a ton of progress was made over the past week. This is, like I said, a raglan sweater. It has this really tall turtleneck collar. And then the other kind of fun feature of this one is in the hem where it has these really like interesting side splits to it. So I just had this on standby over the week while my other project was not getting any love. Actually, having this out here right now and me looking at it reminds me that I did try out a little spotlight feature on my darker WIPs right now. I just have a couple of things in this dark brown color that I'm loving at the moment, but I know it's really difficult to see the details on camera. So I appreciate the feedback. I always appreciate constructive feedback. I'm always trying to make these videos better for you. So thank you so much for letting me know that that was helpful. I will definitely continue to try and, do something to make it so that you can see these otherwise just very invisible knits because they're just there's not enough light in the world to be able to see the definition on these stitches. But I am knitting this up on my 5mm needles, and this is Barocco Ultra Wool, the superwash wool that I'm really not very fond of, but have it in my stash, so we're getting it out. I don't mind the finished product. I just don't like the knitting experience, if you haven't caught that from me before. I'm knitting mine in the size extra large. I really did not do a gauge swatch. I mean, I just did not. I did not do a gauge swatch for this project. It was something a very impulse cast on just on a day where I was going to be out and about and I needed something in the round and I wanted to make more progress on something more so than just my purse project. So that was how this kind of came to be. And yeah, I'm gonna try to get through those next 8 rows. Maybe I'll try to just dedicate a little bit of time to getting that done sooner than later so that I really do truly have a mindless knitting in the round project for a couple of days while I devote more attention to my other project. But for now, not a lot was done over the past week. I just wanted to make sure that we chatted about that one real quick. So super close to the point where we're splitting for the sleeves. And as of today, this project has been on my needles for 16 days. Okay, now let's just talk about the project that has received all of my attention, and that is the cardigan that I'm knitting for my sister. It is the Poet's Cardigan by Allison Schmidt, which is based on the Taylor Swift Tortured Poets Department cardigan. And this is my own take on it because I have pretty heavily modified the pattern to make it according to my sister's measurements. My measurements were about the same size. And the pattern that you see on Ravelry by Allison Schmidt, it is her version, her personal version of the Poet's Cardigan that she has provided that template for. So if you are her size or plan to make it in the same size that she did, then you have a really great pattern there for you. And then like me, if you're trying to make this in another size, you can reference that pattern for free and figure it out to create something that's going to work for you. So that's what I have been doing. I am knitting this cabled cardigan that's knit up in pieces using Lion brand wool ease. And as a matter of fact, I realized that I don't know where I got the name Oxford Gray from for the color of this yarn. I actually just caught the name of it on one of the labels when I was switching them out. And this is actually called Gray Heather. So it's not Oxford Gray. Not sure where I got that from. But let us take a look at where things are at right now. So last week I had just finished the 2 front panels, which are completely identical. I don't know why this yarn really does tend to curl up quite a bit. I'm assuming it's just because it's done in the pieces, and so it's kind of hard for it to lay flat. But I had just finished these front panels last week. And then just before starting to film today, I finished the back panel. And oh my gosh, thank God I did. So the last time I spoke to you, I literally had just finished those two front panels, and I had mentioned that for this week's podcast, I would like to finish the back panel so that I can move on to the sleeves, to the cuffs, to the ribbing, to the button bands, all because I would like to get this project, well, not I would like, my intended deadline for this project is to have it done by November 21st is the current deadline that I've set for myself. So as of today that I'm filming, it's actually the evening of Wednesday, November 13th, and I just finished this back panel. So that leaves me with literally a week to get the rest done. And this took about 6 days of my life to get done. Given I really didn't have a ton of knitting time over the weekend, so I've been dedicating the past couple of days to just making sure I work through this. Now, part of what's taking that time, first of all, it's an obscenely little amount of time to be getting this project done in. This is like, it's so intense, and I don't recommend trying to do this at all. I simply want to get this done because my sister is going to see the Taylor Swift concert, and she wants to wear this on the plane on her way to go see Taylor Swift. So that is my arbitrary deadline. And as of today, this project has been on my needles for 17 days. And in that time, so I've completed the back panel and the two front panels. And I think that that's a really fair amount of time for the work that I've accomplished, but I also think that the part I did not factor in when I started this project because I had not yet realized it was just Allison's version of the pattern and it wasn't a standard knitting pattern with multiple sizes. I really didn't consider that when I cast it on. So there's a lot more time and consideration that's going in to the in-between of knitting these things. After filming last week, I sat down and I looked at, once again, Allison's version of the cardigan, Taylor Swift's version of the cardigan, and I decided how I was going to play this. So what I had done was I referenced Allison's stitch counts and again mathed things out the way that I had done in the front to figure out how many stitches more I needed on my back panel versus hers in order to fit. And it was actually a lot easier on the back panel because I had already done this for the front panel. So I knew that just for continuity's sake, from the front to the back, the things that I would want to change would be the stitch counts on these cables. They're supposed to be 4-stitch cables in Allison's pattern. I did 6-stitch cables. That was how I did some things on the front too. And then it was easy enough to just kind of add in a purl stitch here and there. And then the only thing that looking at Taylor's version versus Allison's version was that it looks to me like Taylor's version does have a little panel of like a stockinette ribbing under the arm. And so I thought I would throw that in here. Now, I also noticed that Allison's version has these cables going. So you have cable, diamond, cable, diamond, cable, diamond, cable, whereas the Taylor Swift version does not have those cables on the outside. And for me, that was just going to be too much bare space to try and fill in to meet the measurements that I was aiming for. So I did go ahead and do the cables like Allison has. The goal is for this to be a nice, cozy, oversized cardigan for my sister. And so it was a lot easier to get those stitch counts for this than it was on the fronts. From there, I really just referenced my own situation that I had done on the front. So I matched the amount of rows I had done before casting off a few stitches for the sleeves. I also kind of chose an arbitrary number just based on casting off that stockinette panel and then continuing up with the ribbing. That was the easiest thing for me to figure. And then the only other thing that I thought I would point out here is, so being that these are knit in panels, they use this method of binding off where you kind of bind off a set of stitches and then finish the row, and then bind off a set of stitches and then finish the row. And you do that back and forth to get these sloped parts. Now, this is also how it's done in the Folklore cardigan by Lion Brand, which I had knit earlier this year. And in doing that cardigan, they have you start by casting off the kind of middle, so where the back of the neck is supposed to sit, and then knitting those shoulder panels a bit higher. Which, when I had done that in the Folklore cardigan, I then wound up needing to compensate for the scoop in the back by adding some short rows in the ribbing back there. And when I was looking at Allison's version, which feels largely based off of the Folklore version, the Folklore cardigan, I noticed that hers also had that dip down in the back. And what I thought would happen is if it has that scoop in the back and then you knit the ribbing, the same everywhere, would it not kind of force the back panel, if there is a gap on the back there, would it not kind of force that to cheat forward a little bit so that, your neck kind of fits into that little hole and then these seams would come down further? And I didn't like the idea of that. And so I was trying to come up with a remedy when I realized, well, most drop shoulder sweaters have that trapezoid shape across the back. Or you're building up typically short rows on the back to raise the back of the neck. So I thought, why wouldn't I just do that here? And so instead of binding off that set of behind the neck stitches and then continuing with the two shoulders flat, I actually created the slopes for the shoulders. And then the very last thing I did was bind off that middle set of stitches that will sit on the back of the neck. So now the next thing that happens with these panels is that the front and the back get sewn to each other. And why don't I just add a couple of stitch markers and we can kind of throw this on, traffic vest style and get an idea at least of how things are going to fit the best that we can. So let me just hodgepodge this really quick. While I'm doing this, I will say thank you so much for all the suggestions on the buttons. I actually really love the idea of a sort of like pewter metal style button. I'll have to see what I can find in the obviously very limited time that I have. I also am not opposed to just, throwing on whatever I can find and then worrying about more permanent buttons later. I also, you may have caught that I said she plans to wear this on the plane. So she's going to see Taylor Swift in Canada. And I know that in my fall knitting plans, when I had mentioned that, like, if this didn't get done, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I had so many Swifties come out and they said, oh my gosh, you better confirm that she is not planning to wear that to the concert because, these Swifties, they really take themselves seriously with their concert outfits. So I kind of called her and just casually was like, hey, what are you wearing to the concert? How did I phrase it? I said, by the way, I know I'm knitting you this cardigan, but please don't feel pressured to wear it to the concert just because I'm making it for you. You should wear whatever you want to wear to the concert. And I was so relieved because truly I had not even considered that before everyone warned me that that could be a really crucial piece to the ensemble. And she said no. She was never planning to wear it to the concert. And I was like, all right, good. Because there's a chance this does not get done in time. Not to mention there's a chance that that's not even going to fit because I've never done anything like this before. I've modified patterns, but I've certainly never rewritten patterns to the degree that I am in this situation. So boy, was I relieved when she said she was not planning on wearing it to the concert. Sorry, I'm digging around here trying to find a couple more stitch markers. So all the more reason I was happy to just lean into the very just like cozy, oversized cardigan vibes of it all. And yeah, I'm gonna have to just try and manage my time over the next week. And the reason I am giving myself a day extra than I was originally planning is because I had used this yarn to knit my cousin's folklore cardigan. And when I did that, I wet blocked it, and I really did not see a huge transformation in the wet blocking. And then I wound up doing a steam block, and that made all the difference. So I thought, you know what? In a pinch, I could be knitting this literally up until, the moment I have to leave the house to get it to her. And then I'll just give it a quick steam block and we'll call that what it is. All right, let us toss this on. Like I said, my sister and I are about the same size. She is quite a few inches shorter than me. And this is currently missing the ribbing on the bottom, so it will be even longer. I do feel like I maybe went a little overboard in the length, but cozy oversized, All right. Okay, did I do that right? There we go. All right. Now imagine again that this is all connected under the arms. Where's that corner? There it is. Obviously, you never wear such a massive sweater underneath it, but I take back what I just said about the length. I think the length is perfect. I'm going to stand up so that you can get a better idea. But again, imagine that there's a couple inches of ribbing. Imagine that the sides are sewn up, the shoulders are sewn up, and that there are sleeves and a button band. And I think that this is looking good, right? I mostly want to know what the back looks like. So I'll learn that while I'm editing this. Cool. Okay. I'm actually really glad that I did this because looking at the back panel, I was feeling like it was looking really large. But I feel like part of that is the fact that these front panels, they have a pretty good substantial amount of ribbing on them. And so the back panel kind of compensates for that additional 2 inches or so that will be down the front of this. And so I think right now things are looking promising. Now, again, just with the blocking with this yarn, the steam block really helps to kind of squish out all of these cables, and it truly does make it all sit quite flat, and therefore it really expands, especially in these front panels where we have so many different cables. The back is a little bit more realistic right now in how large it's going to be, just because it's mostly the diamonds and a lot of negative space. But I think that things are looking pretty good. So if I'm sitting here right now and coming up with what's next, because I'm literally winging this as I go. I'm coming up with how I'm going to be approaching the next step, which is something that's really nice about a seamed cardigan, because you really do have these like bite-sized bits that need to get accomplished, and it really just makes it so much easier. So I was floating the idea of trying to pick up the stitches for the sleeves and knitting them down. But I realized then and I know I even said this out loud when I knit that folklore cardigan, it is a set-in sleeve. That is how these sleeves are knit up. So what I had done for the folklore cardigan was follow the pattern, and I just knit them 2 at a time, the same way that I had knit the front panels 2 at a time. So I think that that's what I'm going to do again this time. And I'll probably just use the same math that I did to figure out the stitch counts for the back panel, to then figure out the stitch counts for the sleeves. And I will knit those from the bottom up. And really, that's going to be a big hope for the best type situation, because when you knit this set in sleeve in pieces, you wind up with this sort of bell shape. And I'll just put a photo on the screen here of what that looks like. But this is where if I was like a master sewist, I could probably, figure out if I was a real true pattern maker for sewing, I could probably figure out all of the maths involved with making sure that that whole sleeve is like the right size in the sleeve cap. But I think what I will do is try to seam this up on the shoulders. I won't seam up the sides yet. And as I am knitting the sleeve and get to the point where you start decreasing for that kind of bell shape, I will probably just hold it into the actual space where the sleeve is going to go and do my best to make sure that at whatever decrease rate I'm following, it really is kind of filling in that gap just right and doesn't wind up being too big or too small and therefore bunching or stretching weirdly. So I think that that's the plan. And ideally, if I was able to get that back panel done in about a week's time, and really it was 2.5 solid days of knitting on it, and I mean days, I think I will set a goal of having the sleeves done for Tuesday of next week. And then that would give me Wednesday and Thursday to knit all of the ribbing, and just get it done. That's what I'm thinking right now. Obviously, like I said, this is a overly ambitious project. I really don't recommend doing things this way. It does suck a little bit of the fun out of it all, but there's also the challenge element to it. So there's a give and take here, but I do wish that I had a little more time to dedicate to my other projects. And so if nothing else, I'm learning from this that I'm just not someone who could do like I'm going to knit a sweater in a week challenge. It's just not who I am. But anyway, I'm very excited about how it's looking right now. I think it's I think it's promising. So if nothing else, I'm going to take that as a little validation today. I also just meant to point out that the other modification that I had made to Allison's version is the fact that I cast on all of my panels with a provisional cast on. I did the provisional cast on right onto some try-it-on tubing so that when all is said and done, I can just pop those stitches right back onto needles and then knit the ribbing down, which means that I get to avoid doing an Italian cast on, and instead I'll do an Italian bind off. And it also just means that I can have a little bit more control over the length. If I get this all seamed up and it's feeling like, oof, it's a little bit longer than I thought it would be, then I could just knit that ribbing a little bit shorter, and then vice versa if it's feeling a little too short for now. So doing the provisional cast on was just kind of my security blanket in knitting a garment that's pieced and from the bottom up, to just give myself that little bit of wiggle room to be able to knit the ribbing from the top down then. Beautiful. All right, that is the Poet's cardigan. It's been on the needles for 17 days today, and we have about 7 or 8 days to go. Wish me luck. Okay, just realized that I totally forgot I also have a sort of finished object this week, and those are the Favorite Fingerless Mittens by Jennifer from Pairs Well with Knitting. I so appreciate everyone's advice on your favorite small circumference knitting. I think I'll wind up trying those flexi flips. I think I'd like to find them in a yarn shop somewhere and be able to buy them in person. And until then, I'll keep going with the magic loop and just consider it practice. But that was how I knit these on magic loop. So this is one pair of those Favorite Fingerless Mittens done, with the exception of I have not yet woven in the ends and I have yet to block them. So I knit these on 4.5 millimeter needles using a worsted weight yarn held with a mohair. The worsted weight yarn is a miscellaneous yarn that I thrifted at some point, and then the mohair is Barocco Ariel, and it was gifted by a subscriber, so thank you so much. I cannot tell you just how fun it was and how how enjoyable the experience was to knit with a color like this that I wouldn't personally wear, but these are a giftable that I'm working on a few pairs of with the intentions of gifting them, obviously, for the holidays. So I knit these. Again, I didn't do a gauge swatch or anything. I just cast them on. I knit them in the smallest size in the pattern, but with the belief and assumption that my gauge would be a little bit of a larger gauge. So then I would wind up with something more like a medium. Now, I have fairly large hands. Sorry, I'm getting distracted because looking at these, one literally physically looks bigger than the other. And it's possible that that's a gauge thing. It's possible that that was an actual mistake where maybe I had cast on a stitch left or less, or it's possible, and it kind of looks like this is the case, that one is the first one that I've done and then one is the second one. And so one I've been trying on and taking off, and then the other one hasn't been touched yet. But I have fairly large hands, and I don't know the hand size of the person who will be receiving these ones. And so I don't know exactly. I think that they're good, but I do think that for the next pair that I make, I'll probably just knit that size medium, even though I'll probably wind up with about the same gauge again, just because they're like the littlest bit snug. I followed the pattern for the cast on. You knit down, you get to the point where the thumb is, and you wind up knitting flat. I think for the next pair, I do believe that I wound up following the amount of rows that she tells you to in the pattern. I think that it could use just one more row for my gauge, for my hand, for my own comfort. That I think would work best for me. And then the reason why my ends are not yet woven in, I could weave in these ends at the cast on, which is at the knuckle at the top, but I think that when I finish making all of the pairs of these mittens that I intend to make, I might go back to this pair and undo the cast off, and then redo that, because I truly did do this cast off way too tight. And my advice would be that if you're planning to knit any sort of like stockinette mitten for someone as a gift this season, I would err on the side of caution when it comes to that cast off, and I would go a needle size or two up to do the cast off, because it wound up being so tight that when I have them on, they're a little bit uncomfortable. Now, I have fairly large hands, but I do think that my wrists for my size are a little bit on the smaller side. So the fact that these are feeling kind of snug on me just gives me a little bit of pause when it comes to this particular pair. But overall, I adored the just quickness of this. They took all of a few hours to knit in total. I'll definitely try to time myself on the next pair, and I'll probably honestly just do like a lump sum of project breakdown at the end for the multiple pairs of these that I'm planning to knit. I think I have about 5 on my mental list. So this was the first pair, and truly they did not use up much yarn at all. They were so quick to knit up, and I'm looking forward to making more of them. If nothing else, they're gift knits, and I don't do that. In fact, if you'd like to know my policy, I started this last year with my family. I let all of my family know for Christmas that I would not be giving anyone any Christmas gifts. And instead, for their birthdays or just other times throughout the year, I would be gifting something handmade to each of my immediate family members. And that was what I had done. I did feel really awkward last Christmas showing up without gifts, but it was the most meaningful year for gifting for me. That was when I knit my dad's sweater for his birthday. My sister's getting that cardigan as a very belated birthday gift, but I told her about it on her birthday. I had made a couple of other things for my mom. And so that is how I am approaching gifting. I think that these are great if you're looking for something to be able to give, that's just a quick project, a quick little thing, not a whole garment or anything too time consuming, but just to show someone that you care. I think that these are a great option if you're looking for a quick and simple gift knit is the point that I'm making. And I don't typically do a gift knits, but I really did have fun playing with colors I wouldn't normally and just doing something I wouldn't normally do. Having them on right now too, I need a pair. I love them. They're so comfortable and they really are just so nice and warm, and I could see them being the perfect thing to just kind of put in that inner pocket in your winter coat and have for the rest of the chilly season. Just in case you need a little something, you could still knit with them. I didn't know how I would feel at first about it not having that little thumb piece, but I just love the free range of movement that you have with these. The only thing is you just want to make sure that you do that bind off really loosely, because I'll show you now. So they're really simple to get off. This is the smaller of the two, and watch me put this on. I have to wriggle and wiggle my way into this, and that's why I'm thinking I should undo the bind offs and just bind them off way more loosely if I'm going to gift these ones. There's also a possibility that I'll get to a point where I've knit the rest of them and I just make another pair of these and then gift these to someone that I know has smaller hands for sure, and consider these sort of a test pair. But I think they're really great. Perfect for a little scrap project, and truly they did take just hours each. But the next pair I make, I will time myself and I'll be sure to just collect all this information for when they're all done. I think if I do one a week up until Christmas, I'll have them all ready to go at the same time. So I'll try to document them better. Let me know if you have any other questions around these exactly, and I will make sure to get back to you if you want to get started with a pair. Really great, easy pattern. She has different weights. Just a perfect little, I don't know. I just really like them. They're really fun to knit and they're not typically my color, so I enjoyed it that much more. Okay, now the last thing that I have to talk about, actually a good transition, because I picked this up with the intention of making another pair of mittens out of them. And it is some yarn that I had thrifted. In fact, I still have not opened the package that they put this in. Sometimes Goodwill puts their yarns into these little plastic packages, and it bugs me because, as you can see from this side, you can't see a label or anything, so it's hard to tell what's exactly in there. But I flipped this one over and I saw something where it says 20% lambs, 80% merino. That's exactly what it says. So I snagged it. Okay, perfect. This color really excited me. Like I said, for another pair of mittens, this was the perfect color for one of the people that I'm gifting for. And it says Christian de Falbe, something like that. 20%. Can I pull out one of these labels? Oh, there we go. 20% lambs, 80% merino. It says Chandos, Chandos. 50 grams, approximately 120 meters. And the color is turquoise. I got the little package, so a 100 grams of this yarn for $3. And I just thought that was the perfect thing for a little giftable. In fact, I'm going to have plenty of it left over, so I'll have to find something else to do with this yarn. But it's a really fun color, right? Again, not typically my color, but really fun for gift knitting. So that was a good little thrift find this week. Other than that, that's what's going on in project world. So this weekend, we have a couple of things going on, which means, again, there's not going to be the most knitting time over the weekend, which is good because my hands need a little break, but I'm going to squeeze in the poet stuff wherever I can. I'll probably try to draft up the stitch counts and everything for the sleeves on that one today. And then I think I will also try to just bang out those last few rows on the yoga winter sweater, because I have an event over the weekend where I can knit without looking, knit in the dark. So it would be nice to just have that at a point where it's in the round and I can pay attention to that for a little bit. And then, yeah, we'll see. After that, I'll be very eager to get back to my 2024 holiday dress. I'll be very excited to get back to just knitting some things for me. And those are just, the woes of being a knitter who likes to give their family fun things. So anyway, I think that that's all I have today. If you enjoyed this video, I would very much appreciate it if you would go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you subscribe and you ring the bell, you're going to be notified anytime I post a new video. However, I do post a podcast just like this one every Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And with that, a big ol' thanks for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. All right, you guys. Bye. Don't worry, I remembered my earrings today.